I'm pretty sure the video the second lecture that I left for you on Thursday went through chapter 28, but it didn't go all the way through chapter 8. I think it went through like page 412, 413, something like that. And I wanted to very briefly, I don't think I need to do that. Page 413, in case I didn't mention it, the last couple pages in chapter 28, Sam's, he's in that inn, for lack of a better word, pub, whatever. A couple of his father's constables, okay, his father just being king, so constables of the kingdom, come up to ask him questions. They notice the charter mark, they notice the bells, they call him a necromancer, and Sam hits him with a couple of spells, essentially. And we're told, 413, he thinks he kills them, okay? Then we leave Sam and we go back to, I almost said Christabel for some reason, with Lyria, chapter 29. The stuff that was in the previous lectures, Lyria and the dog, they go down. What does she find? They go down to that lower room that nobody's ever seen before. Anybody remember? She gets 3 things. Pan pipes, okay, that all blow each of which blows a tune or a sound, a note that corresponds to one of the bells, okay? 7 pipes, 7 bells, all right? What else? 2 other things.
A book. It's very similar to the Book of the Dead.
But it's called the Book of Remembrance and Forgetting. So it's a book for remembering and a book for forgetting, okay? Third thing?
Mirror.
The Black Mirror. Very interestingly, what's that other series? Stoneheart. The Stoneheart trilogy by Charlie Fletcher. I've taught that book in this fantasy lit course also. I've taught that series. The Charlie Fletcher books, the Stoneheart trilogy, which is set in kind of it's set in our London, but it's kind of a different London, also features a thing very similar to this mirror. It's kind of interesting, and there's a couple of other fantasy series that do the same. So it must be one of those things that Tolkien says in the essay on fairy stories. It must be one of those things that goes back, way back, and people kind of keep bringing it forth for some reason. So, chapter 29, Lyriel and the dog make their way back up, and they realize there's a bunch of Claire. She thinks she's going to be in trouble, etc., etc. And she starts to fall. Couple of hands, couple of people stop her from falling off the little bridge. 422. And there's Seinar and Rael, those 2 twins of the Claire. They tell her to stand up, and they tell her that for the first time, she has been seen by the Claire. And notice, when they talk about seeing not with your physical eyes, it's always cap S or cap S, seen or saw. Sometimes it's present tense, see, or the infinitive form to see. All right? So, page 423 in mine at least, this is too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe about 8 pages, I don't know, in your version. They mention Lyriel's birthright. And she says, 420 in mine, 423. What do you mean birthright? Why? Because the narrator tells us, this isn't Liriel speaking, the narrator tells us the sight was the Clare's birthright. That is, every member of the Clare has this birthright, not a trio of strange magical devices. So they tell her the book, the pipes, the mirror are her inheritance. They were made for her, essentially. So, which one of the two is speaking now? We're not told. It's unclear. The other one begins saying, you know that alone amongst the Clare you have never been seen in the visions. Never a glimpse till now. But an hour ago, the 9-day watch saw that you, notice, would be here. They didn't see her there. They saw that in the future, she would be there. So they finish their watch and they go meet her. And we saw you in another place too. None of us even suspected that this bridge existed, nor the room beyond. It is clear that while the Clare of today have not seen you in their visions, the Clare of long ago did. And I can't remember where. It's somewhere, I think in the portion that was included in the video lectures. We were told that the Clare of how long ago saw her in their visions. Anybody remember? I remember it was like 1,000 years ago. Okay? So, she hasn't been seen for, well, at all during her lifetime. And seemingly, nobody saw her before that until you go back 1,000 years. But it is clear that while the Clare of today have not seen you, the Clare of long ago did, and they saw enough to prepare this place and the things you hold. To prepare you. For what? Notice. Go back to the beginning of the book. What's the problem Liriel is having? She hasn't gotten to sight. What's that really mean, though? I mean, that's kind of the external manifestation of what her real problem is. The problem that emotionally she's dealing with. She doesn't belong. She's not like everybody else. Okay? She's not like everybody else, right? She's intentionally not like everybody else. Okay? The narrator is creating this image that she is, in some sense, special. She's different. Okay? Could be a little idea that the narrator or that the author wants the reader to come away with, that, each person, has this. So, she's like, I don't want anything. All I want is to be, I don't want to be different. I want to be like everybody else. That's all part of what? I want to fit in. Because when you don't fit in, what happens? You get the banged up elbows, you get the banged up shoulders, you get beat up by life, so to speak. She just wants to go along. Now, Sanar speaks to her. Sanar, however you pronounce her name. The sight may yet come to you in time and be the stronger for the waiting, right? She and her sister were 16 and a half when the sight came to them. They're among the best seers, strongest seers, etc. But for now, you've been given other gifts. In other words, she wants what? She wants the gift traditionally given. But now she's told, you've been given other gifts. I really need to teach this in conjunction with those other books. In C.S. Lewis's Paralandra, the second book in his space trilogy, okay, he has a character. We don't have time for this because we're going to get behind now. But he has a character that is innocent. I mean, sinless, totally innocent. Why? Because Paralandra is the Paralandrian name for what we call Venus. Okay? And this person is a woman. She's the queen of Paralandra. She's the only woman on Paralandra. And she's been temporarily separated from her husband. They are, for Paralandra, Adam and Eve. The whole novel is about the temptation. It's the rewriting in science fiction form of Genesis 1 through 3, essentially. Okay? Actually, what Lewis is doing is he's rewriting the temptation scene of John Milton's Paradise Lost. Because he thinks Milton did something wrong. Lewis was a critic of Milton. I mean, he wrote criticism on Milton, taught Milton, etc. Okay? And one of the things he thinks Milton did wrong is he made God too anthropomorphic. He made God too visible, too manifest. So in his version, God is just kind of a voice, kind of Isaiah's still small voice that speaks, right? Well, anyways, in Paralandra, you have these conversations between this woman, she's just called the Green Lady until the end of the novel, and a character named Ransom, Christ figure, right? And another character who gets the name the Unman. Okay? He's the guy who invites Satan into him so that we can have Satan and a type of Jesus, a representative of Jesus, can both try to influence the Green Lady. Where am I going with all this? She teaches him, okay, about gifts and accepting gifts. Okay? And it comes about through the discussions that these three have. And what Ransom has to come to learn is that rather than wanting one thing, he needs to learn to accept whatever comes to him. That's, as she puts it, that's the gift that Maladil brings. And what you want to do is you want to hold on to another gift. And in holding on to that gift, to that thing, what happens to it? It becomes bad. Let's say it's something sweet. Well, it turns sour in the mouth. Why? Because you've denied the new pleasure that is coming. Okay? It's the same thing she is saying here. Notice, you've been given other gifts. Gifts that I am sure will be sorely needed by the kingdom. In other words, the gifts aren't for what? The gift of sight is not for what purpose? It's not to make the Claire, individual Claire, feel fulfilled. It's not to make that individual Claire feel part of the whole. The gift of the sight is for what? It's for the good of those out there. And we're back to Taryn. What's a hero? One who thinks more for others than for himself. The Claire, do they understand what they see when they see it? No. Because what is it really like? Snippets of images. Is it ever really fully clear? No. Even when Lyriel, in just a few moments, is given the gift of sight, not really, it's kind of like they kind of say, okay, you're going to understand this. This is the sight you want, Obi-Wan-ish kind of a thing. It's for what purpose? Does seeing Nicholas Sayre in the boat make her feel fulfilled? No. It's all about so that she can find him, and then what? Does she know what's going to happen? It's to figure out where you're going from that point on. Life, right? That is exactly like life. You plan, you go through your majors, you do all your coursework. Why? Because you have this idea, this is what I'm going to do with my life, etc. And then life has a way of doing what? I think it was Einstein who said this. This kind of life, all cap, has a way of intruding. That is, we make our little plans and it pokes holes in those plans. As all of us of the blood are given gifts. What's that of the blood?
Charter.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's going back to the idea of the charter. And as all of us of the blood are given gifts, we are also laden with the responsibility to use them wisely and well. Laden. Loaded down. Okay? What is it Uncle Ben says to young Peter Parker? With great power comes great responsibility. That idea. I literally forgot, I did not remember seeing the next sentence when I brought up Uncle Ben. You have the potential for great power, Liriol. But I fear you also face great tests. Okay? So, she goes on, you will meet many trials on a path that lies unseen. The path is unseen, and yet what must she do? She's got to walk on it. She doesn't know where she's going. You may not see, but you will remember. And in the remembering, you will see the hidden past that holds the secrets of the future. Notice, she will therefore what? She will see. She will see in a way differently than the Claire see. And notice, by the way, that name, Claire, even though it's spelled that way, that's the first syllable in what English word derived from Latin?
Clairvoyant.
It's not the one I was thinking of, but if I could remember how to spell. Clairvoyant, clarity, clarify. Notice, clear. What do all those mean? Clear. To make clear. To remove obstacles. They all have to do with sight and seeing. Okay? So, they keep talking. Now, Rael speaks. 425. When we saw you here this evening, we also saw you somewhere else. Well, how can that be? How can she be two places at once? Because it's not once. It's two different times. Somewhere we have labored for many years to see without success. On the Red Lake in a boat of woven reeds. Sun was high and bright, so we know it will be in summer. You look much as you do now, so we know it's in the summer coming that you will be there. How old is she now? When we first met her beginning of the book, she just turned 14. Today is her 19th birthday. Okay? So, we saw you next summer. And there's going to be a young man, a sick or wounded man, one we were asked to seek for the king. We don't know where he is now, or how or when he will come to the Red Lake. He's surrounded by powers that cloak our vision. But notice, she says, we saw him with you. Okay? She says, you need to be there in that boat in the height of summer. Why? A danger not just, he's in some great, terrible danger. A danger not just to him, but to all of us to the kingdom. He will be there with you in the reed boat at the. So, what's that to do with me? Notice, you can read that, I think, partially at least, as saying, so, why me? What's my purpose in all this? I mean, the red lake, this man, everything. I'm a second assistant librarian. All I do is catalog books, and put them back on the shelves and borrow them. What have I got to do with it? What's that question really asking? In The Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf explains in the chapter The Shadow of the Past about the history of the ring that Frodo now owns, Frodo says, essentially, so what am I supposed to do with it? I'm just a little midget. Literally. He's a midget, okay? He's like not even 3 feet tall. This is the ring of power, the power Satan wants, to grow fully back to. What am I supposed to do? And Gandalf says, whatever you can, with such strength, wit, and heart as you have. Okay? She's saying, I'm not trained for this. I'm not made for great quests, great, powers and stuff. Sanor, in response to, what have I got to do with it? We don't know. We just saw you and a guy in the boat. That's it. We didn't see you breaking down, the thrones and powers. And visions are fragmented. A dark cloud spreads like spilt ink across the pages of possible futures. Notice, the dark cloud covers what? She doesn't use the word all, but I think it's implied. All the possible futures we've seen. After all, the one woman did see what futures? Fire and destruction. The whole kingdom destroyed. Futures. That's all she saw. All we know is this man is important for both good and ill, and we've seen you with him. You got to leave the glacier. You got to go south. You got to find the reed boat on the Red Lake, and you've got to find him. From that point on, you're on your own, kid. Figure it out yourself. Notice, Liriel looked at Sanor's lips, still moving, but she doesn't hear anything. Like she's tuned everything out. Oh yeah, we've had another vision too, she says, of the man. Come, we will show you, so you will know him at the proper time and know something of the danger he is in. So now they're going to show this vision to her. She goes, I can't go to the observatory. I've not awoken. She goes, don't worry about that. It's difficult for you to gaze upon your heart's desire when you may not possess it. It's difficult for you to gaze upon your heart's desire when you may not possess. It's difficult for you to do what? What does that mean? To look at what it is you really want when you don't have the ability to look at what it is you really want. If the danger were any less or someone else could shoulder the burden, we would not press you so. If the vision were not of this place that resists us, we could probably show you elsewhere too. In other words, we got to show you this. You don't realize this, how important this is. Okay? So, they take her up. They have to blindfold her and such. 434, 435. This is about 3 pages before the end of the chapter. They're all looking up. She sees all the charter marks at the ceiling of the observatory. But it doesn't make any sense until Rael moves her wand and says, look. And then Sanor says, see. And when Rael says, look, the wand she held suddenly became a bottle of bright green glass. Sanor says, learn. And she waves a pattern above Liriel's head. Then Rael threw the contents of the bottle, seemingly at Liriel. But as the liquid flew overhead, Sanar's wand transformed it into ice. So it becomes like a flat viewing screen above her head. Hologram almost. And she sees all these little pictures, and they all become one, like a giant mosaic. She was standing, page 436, next to the man. She could hear his rasping, unhealthy-sounding breath, smell the faintest hint of sweat, and what else? Free magic. Next chapter. Nicholas in the pit. We're going to skip most of. She hears Nicholas. She watches Nicholas talk to Hedge and such. She sees Hedge look at Nicholas and then say, "Who's that with you?" Nicholas, "Nobody with me." "Spy, you burn at the..." And Hedge tries to hit Liriel with a spell. And that's when Nicholas sees her. Okay, so how does he see her? Is he kind of like metaphysically on the other side of the glass looking through? Is she somehow, in a Star Trek-y kind of image, partially beamed through so that there's this hazy outline of her? Rael, you saw. Yes. Sorely troubled, as much by the experience of the vision as by what she'd seen. Is that what it's like to have this side? Why do you think she asked that question? I think she's glad she doesn't see. Because that's troubling. And I don't mean troubling just because of the vision she saw. Sanar, not exactly. We mostly see in short flashes, brief fragments, from many different parts of the future, all mixed up, only together, here in the observatory, with the watch all together, she says, can we unify the vision? And even then, only the person who stands where you are standing sees it all. So when they had the 1,568 member watch or whatever it was, you had 1,500 plus people in there. They're all looking, and each of them is seeing what? Their own little snippet of the vision. And it's only when all of those are put together that one person gets to see the whole picture. But even that's not a whole picture. I think that's Nix's way of suggesting to us. What's the best way to perceive or understand reality? Is it just my way? I have the absolute truth? I'm the only one who sees and understands? No, it's not that. It's you get as broad a perspective as possible. It doesn't mean everything is equally true, valid, etc. But it means there are lots of different perspectives on certain things. And it's only by putting all of the slices of the image together. It's like if you take a picture, and run it through a document shredder. We can pull that picture out, and I can give a piece to each of you. How much of it do you see? A little thin sliver. It takes putting everything together to get it all. All right? So, she gets ready to leave. She runs into her aunt. Her aunt, says, "I love you. I love your mother, blah, blah, blah." Back to Sam. Sam's fleeing in the forest. He hears a voice. He's worried. He doesn't know what the voice is. And this is, I don't know, half dozen or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 or 7 pages, maybe 8 pages in. He hears the voice. The voice sounds unnatural. There's free magic, in the voice and such. And Sam sees Mogget. Now, where's Mogget been? At least according to what we heard early in the novel.
Asleep in the Horson's house.
He's been asleep in Abhorson's house. For how long?
Since the end of the first book.
Yeah. How old is Sam? Sam, I've got it written down. In here is... Nope, I've got it written down in the beginning of the previous book. Sam's like 16, 17, okay? Lyria, we just found out, is 19, and we're going to see in part 3, 18th year of the restoration of King Touchstone is part 3, okay? We're told Sam, we're going to be told in just a couple pages, in fact, Sam's seen Mogget once, okay? So he asks, what are you doing here? Looking for you. Okay? And Sam's thinking, Mogget was a servant of the Abhorsen, but he's also a free magic being. Why is he out here looking for me? Okay? Did Mother send you? Sam asks. No. Well, kind of. He says, 462, the return of Cassiel's bells did not waken me. Let me back up a little bit. Mogget says, the Abhorsen had nothing directly to do with it. Having been associated with the family for so long, I am simply aware of when my services are required. That is, when danger is afoot. For example, when a new set of bells appears, suggesting that an Abhorsen in waiting is ready to come into his inheritance. Having woken, I simply followed the bells. Sabriel has her bells, right? Sam has bells. Lyria has pipes. He says, I was already awake. Something's happening in the kingdom. Things long dormant are stirring or being woken. Ripples of their waking have spread to Abhorsen's house. So, whatever wakens threatens the Abhorsen. Now, what did he say? I know when I'm needed, meaning I know when I need to protect the Abhorsen. Okay? Sam says, he wonders if Caragor has something to do with it. He says no. So they start talking about Nick, page 464. Now I'm not going to talk about the previous. 464. He says he doesn't believe in charter magic or any other magic. Okay? Why? Why doesn't Nick believe in any kind of magic? First of all, where's he from? Old Kingdom? No. He's ENGL Stieran. Okay? In ENGL Stier, what are we told? We're told it's out Sabriel. What's one of the things that differentiates ENGL Stier from the Old Kingdom?
The government denies the existence of magic, and magic doesn't exist in No magic. Closer and closer you get to the wall, magic kind of starts to seep through. Farther and farther south away, no magic. Okay? Has Nick had experience of magic? Very little. He went to the same college that Sam went to, or boys' school that Sam went to. Up here, you got magic overflowing, coming out of everything. All right? What governs Nick's thinking? The motto today, follow the science. Listen to the science. Interesting, I was just thinking about that earlier for some reason, I don't remember why.
one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, a guy named Richard Feynman. Some of his lectures are available on YouTube. Richard Feynman said, "Don't trust scientists." He said, we don't understand things necessarily any more than anybody else does. We're just explorers. We're still trying to figure it out. Because science is ultimately based on what? The scientific method, right? You observe, you hypothesize, and then you attempt to prove. According to science, nothing is ever really taken as 100% proven. You keep testing, you keep proving and such. So he thinks everything can be explained scientifically, the same way Angelsteer and things work. Even after the dead attacked us near the perimeter, he still wouldn't accept that there isn't some explanation other than magic. Okay? Maggid, where is he? Don't know. He was supposed to wait for me at the wall, but he's crossed over. Okay? He talks about the lightning trap. And then Maggid says, the lightning trap. King and the Abhorsen in Angelsteer, trying to stop a great multitude going to their deaths. A friend of the Abhorsen in waiting, a prince of sorts, himself on the other side of the wall, right? Because his father's a high-ranking government official. The Clare sightless, save for visions of total ruin. This does not bode well. And the connections cannot be purely coincidence. The lightning trap. Something's there. Why can't Maggid put it all together? The collar that binds him. All right? So, Sam talks about getting in a fight with the constables. The necromancer, he thought he killed them. Maggid said, of course you didn't kill him. Your father's constables are charmed, and you would have sensed their deaths. End of the chapter. Last page of the chapter. Sam asks, so what is the lightning trap? By description, what is it? What happens there?
Something that collects lightning.
Nick is having a big hole dug in the ground, and he tells Hedge, we overhear this through the sight that Lyrael sees. So he's digging a big hole in the ground, and he says there will be 2 metal hemispheres, each about the height of a man. I never caught that until I was rereading this. I always thought they were a lot bigger for some reason. So about 6 feet in diameter. So you put them together and you have a round ball, roughly 6 feet or so in diameter. And while they're digging, the lightning just keeps hitting this one spot. It's not hitting over here. It's not hitting over here. It's just same spot. Maggid, 474, or the last page of the chapter. I don't know, but I mislike the sound of it. A lightning trap, a gatherer of lightning. Surely it cannot be gatherer of lightning. What do we know about lightning? It's electrical, right? It's electricity. What else? Is it like the electricity running through these walls right now? No. It's massive amounts of electricity. Okay? So, whatever's down here, notice the lightning trap. Now, that can mean it's something that traps it, attracts it, or it's something that traps it, like a battery. You keep hitting the battery book and it's just, juicing up, so to speak. I don't know. There are powers working here, powers that hate everything of the charter blood and stone. So what do? Got to find your friend Nick. So now we have two people, three if you count Mogget as a people, searching for Nick. Okay. So we're going to skip a bit. Go to a few more pages on, 4 or 5 more pages on, and Sam is thinking of an old rhyme. Notice how old rhymes convey truths. Okay? Old wives' tales, old stories convey truths. When the dead do walk, seek waters run. So, if there are dead about, find moving water. For this the dead will always shun. Swift river's best, or broadest lake, that if you can get out in the middle of a pretty big lake. Notice, lake water isn't swiftly moving. It's pretty much still. But if there's a wide expanse of it, it'll protect you. Swift water's best, or broadest lake, to ward the dead and haven make. That is to make a refuge. If water fails thee, fire's thy friend. So if you can't have water, use fire. Notice 2 of the primary elements. Air, earth, fire, water. If neither guards, you're dead. It will be thy end. If you don't have water to protect you, and you can't create fire, you're screwed. Okay? So, they get followed by gore crows. There are some shadow hands later on around. And pages 491, 492 in mine, Sam shows Mogget something he made for his mother. That he just threw in his pack. The little mechanical frog. Mogget, very pretty. Does it do anything? Notice that looks nice. What's its purpose? What's its function? The flying frog answered the question itself, suddenly leaping into the air along a vibrantly red tongue, flashing out to grab several startled mosquitoes. Wings beating furiously, it spiraled after several more, ate them, then dived back down to land contentedly near Sam's feet. Sam catches bugs. That's useful. I thought it would be handy for Mother, since she spends so much time in swamps, hunting the dead. Mogget, you made it. Completely your invention. Yeah, said Sam. But Mogget was silent, just watching the frog's aerobatics, his green eyes following its every move. Then the cat shifted its gaze to Sam. Why? What's going to be suggested about Sam towards the end of the book when they get to Abhorsen's house?
He's not the Abhorsen in waiting.
And he's like, yes, I don't have to go into the dead. Okay? The Sendings they're going to meet up, bring him an overcoat, it's called a surcoat, and they bring Lariel an overcoat called a surcoat. His has what on it?
The wallmaker's trowel.
Exactly. You have a handle. Looking at it from the side, it would look like this. Okay? And the trowel is either a pointed trowel or it could be straight. I'm pretty sure it's a pointed trowel. Okay? The handle would come like this, and then this is flat. Right? The wallmaker's trowel, indicating what about Sam? He's a maker. See, why does he fear going into death so much? Why does he fear the dead so much? What is death? It's the unmaking of things, right? It's the unmaking of living things. It's the dissolution. That's not his thing. His thing is what? His thing is making. It's creating. It's like the very antithesis of what he is. Okay? This is why Mogget is so intrigued. Because what are we going to hear once he gets that, there hasn't been a maker around. Doesn't mean there aren't creators, but there hasn't been a maker, capital M, around for several hundred years. Just as there hasn't been a remembrancer around for several hundred years. Okay? Mogget asks the question, 495. Does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? Sam, huh? What does that mean? Mogget, means you haven't read the book, right? What book is Sam supposed to be reading? Why? Abhorsing and training. That means he's supposed to be training. He's supposed to read the book so that he knows what to do when the time comes. He can't even get close to the book, right? It's like when he touches the book, he wants to vomit. Sam, 496. I wish I were a proper abhorser. Lirio, I wish I were a proper Claire. Well, if wishes were reality, they both would be, right? But they're not, you know. No. Mogget asks him about his sword. His spelled and sorcelled sword. He leaves it at home. And he said, you know, I didn't think. I didn't understand what I was doing when he left. I thought Nick was probably in trouble, but not this much. Mogget, 496. That's the problem with growing up as a prince. You always think everything will get worked out for you. Or you turn out like your sister and think nothing gets done unless you do it. It's a wonder any of you are ever any use at all. Notice, your sister thinks, if it's going to get done, I'm going to do it. Sam thinks, according to Mogget, somebody else will do it. What's Mogget suggesting? It's not one way or the other. It's both and. Okay? Flight to the river. So they're still being chased by door crows. They make it to the mill. Page 510. Well, they almost make it to the mill before the horse collapses. They're being chased by the dead. Mogget tells him, you know what you have to do. Why does he have to kill the horse? Because the dead will use it to feed on and such. Okay? So, Mogget kills it. They jump into the mill. They get away. How do they get away?
In a bathtub.
Tin bathtub. Sam pushes it out of the river. He and Mogget get in. Mogget's like, that was pretty smart. You know, surprisingly. Okay? Then we get part 3. Part 3. We're back at the Clare Glacier. Rael and Sanar say, you're going to sail. We're going to send you on the boat. Find her. They're not going to send her in a paper wind because they don't have any left. She wishes she had the dog because the dog disappeared. She puts the soapstone thing. They make their way. Once she's in the boat, she sticks her hand in her pocket, and there's something that feels like a dog, and she starts pulling, and out comes, a dog. Okay? 532. This is several pages into the chapter. I don't like it, the dog says. You're being sent into danger. No one really knows what's going on. The Clare are unable to see clearly. The king and the Abhorse are not even in the kingdom. This hole in the ground eats up lightning. Reminds me of something very bad indeed. Almost the same thing that Mogget said. There's the necromancer. Okay. Dog asks her, the things that were left for you in the room. Book, mirror, flutes, or panpipes. You know how to use them? They may not be for me, she says. But the Clare told her, those were for you. That room was made for you. I don't want them. Choosers will be beggars if the beggar's not their choosing. What does it mean? Mogget, I don't know. Do you know how to use the things that were left for you? Choosers will be beggars if the begging's not their choosing. That is, if you are forced to beg, what do you have to do? You take what's given to you. You know how to use them. She said, okay, well, yeah, I read the book of Remembrance and Forgetting, so I guess I know the theory. You should practice. I have to go into depth to do that. I've never done that before. I'm not even sure I can. Because who can go into depth? Two kinds of people. Abhorsen can. Who else? Abhorsen, who channels charter magic, essentially, and the necromancers, who use free magic. She says, I've never done that. I'm not even sure I should. Why? Because the Claire don't do that. I should be seeing the future, not the past. You should use the gifts you've been given. All right? She says, how do you even know what my gifts are for? I haven't told you, have I? The dog. I read a lot. Comes from living in a library. Notice, the dog knows a lot more about what's going on, right? Mogget knows a lot more Mogget knows a lot more about what's going on. Okay? So the dog says, there's going to be some islands up ahead in the middle of the river. Ryderland's the major river, north-south in the Old Kingdom. He says we can get on an island and you can practice there. Okay? Last page before the end of the chapter. The panpipes were all very well in their way as a weapon of protection against the dead. 7 pipes named after the 7 bells used by a necromancer. Only they weren't as powerful as the bells, and one part of the book said that, though generally the instrument of a remembrancer, the pipes are not infrequently used by abhorsens in trading till they succeed to their bells. But she thinks the pipes, the book implies, the pipes will be enough to protect her. So, next chapter, we get the bells listed again. Oh, excuse me. This time we get the pipes listed. First and least, Rana. Okay. The sleep bringer. We'll take all those who hear it into slumber. Who's wearing a Rana now? No, I don't think he is. Karagor's wearing Rana. Margaret's later going to tell them Karagor is in the lowest basement at the Abhorsen house with Rana around his neck where he will sleep forever unless he's wakened by whatever the lightning trap thing is. I shouldn't ask that question because I don't know the answer to it. Which bell? Okay, we'll get to it. Second is Mosrael, the Waker. Okay, one of the most dangerous bells, still so in any form. Third is Kibbeth, the Walker. Kibbeth gives freedom of movement to the dead or forces that dead to walk at the piper's will. Okay, just keep that in mind because in a few moments, for us, not for them, we're going to see the dog do something to somebody who's trying to kill them. He's going to bark and howl. Okay? And they're going to ask, what did you do? And he's going to say, I made them walk. I made the person walk. If I remember correctly, the W in walk is capitalized.
Fourth is Dirham, the speaker, blah, blah, blah. So we go through the pipes, okay? She holds up her blade. Well, let me back up. 538. After Lirio whispers through all the pipe names, the dog says, sleeper, waker, walker, speaker, thinker, binder, weeper. 7 bells, right? 7 pipes, 7 bells. She knew better than to ask the dog how she knew the names of the pipes. The impulsible hound had probably already read the Book of Remembrance and Forgetting. She holds the blade up, and the blade says, the Clare saw me, the wall makers made me, my enemies remember me. The dog, a sister sword to binder. I didn't know they had that one. What's it called? And she turns the blade around and notice she can see there's something written on it. Nehema. What's that mean? Dog. It's a name. Suppose you could say it means forget me not. In other words, remember. Though the irony is that Nehema herself is long forgotten. Still, better a sword than a block of stone. I'm surprised they gave it to you. How does the dog know all that? So, she goes into death. Right? She has the dark mirror. The dog shows up. She tells the dog to go back to protect her body. She does what the Book of Remembrance and Forgetting told her to do using the mirror. And she goes back about 20 years. Why? Is there something Rael and Sanar told her? You need to go and find out how you were conceived? No. She wants to know what happened to her mother and who her father was. 547 or so. She sees her mother. Looked beautiful in the soft candlelight, long blonde hair, hanging in a brilliant waterfall down the back of her dress. Okay. She's in this strange house. She meets this man, gray hair and such. And he says, they start talking. He says, I've heard many strange things under this roof, mistress, but none so strange as this. That is, none what you've told me. Now, Liriel kind of enters into the middle of the recording, so to speak. She says, it's not something I sought. None of your vision sisters have seen what you wish? None of the 9-day watch? Nope. I'm the only one. And he tells her, my wife's been dead these 18 years. Okay. Do we know who this is yet? We find out very shortly. So he says, my wife's been dead 18 years. I'm not unfamiliar, she says, with the imaginings of young women or the infatuations of youth. What's she there for? One night stand. He says, my wife's dead. I have a daughter. She tells him, I'm here because of a prophecy. How is it a prophecy? Because I saw it. But she's the only one who saw it. Okay? And he's like, okay, we'll have our night. And that's when she feels death coming, so to speak. Okay? The dog is there again. The dog helps her. Page 559. The dog explains. She says there's free magic in you, maybe even more than the charter magic in your collar. Why aren't you like the necromancer? There's free magic in you. Why aren't you like this other free magic thing? In the beginning, all magic was free magic. Notice, unconstrained, raw, unchanneled. And notice how he puts that. In the beginning, how does Genesis begin? beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. What's meant by earth there? Now, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, that means, the shape of things. Probably not what's meant. What's meant is stuff. The particles that make up everything around us. Everything around us here and everything around us all the way out 14.6 billion years to, boom, beginning of the Big Bang. Okay? Atoms, gluons, nuons, etc., was without form and void. The Greek notion for this was chaos. Everything was chaotic, unordered, unstructured. And then the Greeks have this notion. Logos doesn't only mean word. That is one meaning of it. It also means structure, order. It puts a binding on everything. It connects. It structures things, right? So, in the beginning, all magic, so let's replace magic with existence. All existent stuff was free, unconstrained, raw, unchanneled. Kind of sounds like what from the Bartimaeus books? The other place, right? Because everybody in the other place, all the jinn, they're not separate entities. It's everywhere. Then the charter was created. Big question is, who created the charter? Okay. Then the charter was created, which took most of the free magic and made it ordered, subject to structure, constrained by symbols. What is a symbol? Think of these two words. Symbolic and diabolic. What's diabolic mean? Like if somebody is diabolical.
Evil.
Evil. Why? It's because of this and this. This means together. Dia means apart, to separate. The diameter of a circle is what? Here's the circle, there's the diameter. What have you just done? You cut it in two. This and this are both related to, kind of the idea for meaning. If something is symbolic, it means with. That is, it is both the thing itself and what it connects to. Okay? If it's diabolic, what does it do? It separates, it destroys meaning. Kind of like death. Okay? So, the charter symbols are what bring order and structure. Free magic that remained separate from the charter is the free magic of necromancy, of Stilken, Margru, Hish, Annalem, Gorger, and all the other fell creatures, constructs, and familiars. It is the random magic that exists outside the charter. Random magic kind of implies like chance. The bad stuff that you just cannot explain, There's also the free magic that helped make the charter but was not consumed by it. That's quite different from the free magic that would not join the creation. Lyriel, stop. You speak of the beginning, she says. But could that be before the charter? It doesn't have a beginning or an end. In other words, Lyriel is saying the charter is what? Eternal. Eternal, time, E, charter, thinking, kind of popular Christian terms, the charter's like God. Outside time. Beginningless. Everything has a beginning, says the dog. In other words, you're not right, Liriel. Including the charter. I should know, since I was there at the birth of it. So the dog was from before the beginning. When the 7 chose to make the charter, 7 bells, 7 panpipes with the same name, I should know since I was there at the birth of it. When the 7 chose to make the charter, and the 5 gave themselves to the making. 5 what? 7 what? We don't know yet. In a sense, you were there too, mistress. You're descended from the 5. The 5 great charters. 5 great charters knit the land, together linked hand in hand. One in the people who wear the crown, royalty, right? Who's that? Touchstone. It's not Sabriel. It's Touchstone, okay? One of the people who wear the crown, 2 of the folk who keep the dead down, abhorsens, okay? 3 and 5 became stone and mortar, charter stones, and the wall. 4 seas all in frozen water, the Clare, okay? Good, says the dog. You remember your nursery rhymes. The bloodlines, the wall, and the charter stones all come from the original sacrifice of the 5, who poured their power into the men and women who were your ancestors. Some of those in turn passed that power into stone and mortar when blood alone was judged to be too easily diluted. So if the 5 were sort of dissolved into the charter, what happened to the other 2, right? Because the 7 made the charter. Okay? What happened to the other 2? You said there were 7 who chose to make the charter. Well, actually it began with the 9. So we've got the 9 to the 7 to the 5. 9 were the most powerful, who possessed the conscious thought and foresight that raised them above all the tens of thousands of free magic beings that clamored and strove to exist upon the earth. Clamor and strove. Strove is the past tense of what verb? To strive, which is related to what noun? Strife. Conflict. Okay? Because if you're striving for something, does that mean it's coming easy? No, you're having to fight for it. Okay? So he says, these tens of thousands of beings strove and clamored to exist on the earth. Yet of the 9, only 7 agreed to make the charter. One chose to ignore the 7's work, but was finally bound to serve the charter. The 9th fought and was barely defeated. She says, okay, so that's 8 and 9. Names. It's a lot easier to remember with names. You still haven't explained what happened to 6 and 7. Why do they become part of charters? They put a great deal of their power into the bloodlines, but not all their being. I suspect they were perhaps less tired of conscious individual existence. They wished to go on in some form or another. I think they wanted to see what happened, and the 7 did have names. They were remembered in the bells. Liriel, you're not one of these things, are you? You're not one of the 7, are you? She couldn't imagine that one of the creators of the charter, no matter how much power it had given away, would, and she uses she,
Liriel in her thinking, and I'll say he, Nix in his writing, uses an interesting verb, would condescend to be her friend, or would continue to do so once its true loftiness had been established. What does it mean to condescend? It means to go from a great height and to lower yourself with. We talk about somebody can be condescending. What does that mean? Talking down to someone. But that's not the right meaning. Condescending means to go down onto the level of that individual. Right? You got a great scene in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. The Duke of Athens, Theseus, is getting ready to listen or watch the play within the play. The play within the play is put on by a bunch of intellectual morons. Okay? These are hard workers with their hands, but they're not smart up here. And Theseus says, in contrast to his wife, Queen of the Amazons, who's like, I don't want to watch this. This will be bad. These people are morons. He says, no. We ought to take what they give to us in the manner in which they are offering it to us. In other words, this is their gift. We ought to, he doesn't use the word, but it's implied, we ought to descend to their level to accept what they offer. Talk about accepting the gift that is given rather than the one wants. Okay? So, notice she's like, this creator, one of the creators, condescended. The terminology comes straight out of traditional Christianity. Notice, or that it would continue to be this way. Okay? Because what did the 7 or 5 have to do? They totally denied themselves to be put into the bloodlines, the walls, the stones. I'm the disreputable dog, just the leftover, freely given to the charter, freely given. That is, I gave myself for this purpose, and I'll always be your friend. I think the reason he says, or she says, I'll always be your friend is what? Notice what Liriel's, the previous paragraph, the thought it ended with. Or would continue to do so once its true loftiness had been established. She thinks, this dog is not going to be my dog forever. This dog is going to leave me. Why? Because this dog is responsible for my existence. And the dog says, I'll always be your friend. Okay? And she says, I guess so too. So, skip a bunch again. Bath in the river. We have Liriel and Mogget meet up with Sameth and the dog. And notice pretty early on, about 5 pages in, the dog and the cat recognize each other. The cat spoke. What are you doing here? I thought someone as slippery as you would know the answer to that. Where are you called now? I'm called Mogget most of the time. What name do you? Okay. So they start to talk. Sam wakes up. Sam's like, you can't be a daughter of the Clare. You don't look like a daughter of the Clare. They're all tall and blonde and elegant. This girl was dark-haired, wore odd clothes, etc. Okay? She sees the bells. She thinks he's a necromancer. He says, I'm not. Abhorsen in waiting, or Mogget explains that. He's a prince also. So, skip a bunch. Sam talks about fighting a necromancer. Lyriel talks about fighting a necromancer in 578. She says, I'm a remembrancer. He's like, what is that? They talk about Nicholas. They're both looking for him, obviously. 584. Lyriel talks about having seen Nicholas and what he's doing. And Sam says, really thought we'd get through this. Sam says, Nick never really understood what it was like here meaning the Old Kingdom, or accepted the idea that magic works. Nick had only got worse as he got older, always asking why. He never accepted anything that seemed to contradict his understanding of the forces of nature and the mechanics of how the world worked. Okay? He didn't understand it. What does that mean? Or, I'm trying to think how to put this in a way without giving it away. If he didn't understand it, and he didn't accept that it was real, what possibility does that create in Nick? It means he becomes susceptible to it. That is, if he denies its existence, that becomes its, magic's, way of deceiving him. Okay? They start talking about Angelstier and such. Lyriel and the dog talk about Sam. Lyriel thinks he's spoiled. Dog says he's been through a lot. And Lyriel asks, where is this? Towards the end of the chapter, 4 or 5 pages. In response to Sam saying, I'm afraid of death. I've always been afraid of death. I haven't read the Book of the Dead. He's barely touched the bells. And Lyriel seems to be drawn to the bells. And she finally asks, can I see the bells? Do you mind if I look at them? And she asks, how to use them? And he's like, you got to read the Book of the Dead, but you can't really practice with them because they can only be used in earnest. He goes, yeah, okay, I guess you can look at them. And so she takes them, and she also asks, next page, can I have a look at the Book of the Dead? He's like, it's not to be trifled with. She goes, no, it's okay. I have to read it. So, next chapter begins, Sam wakes up, and he's feeling pretty good. Okay? Lyriel, on the other hand, doesn't wake up because she's been awake all night. She just finished reading the Book of the Dead, finishing the last page. And what does the last page have on it? Does the walker choose the path, or the path choose the walker? And she keeps wondering about that. Okay? So they start to talk about the dogs and the cat's collars and such. And Sam says, the dog's collar has charter marks I've never seen. Okay? And he says, but some of them are familiar. Notice, they're familiar, but they're not ones that he's seen. It's like he senses them. Let's go on a bit. I think we just about skipped the rest of that. Yep. Next chapter, under the bridge. So they're getting ready to go under the bridge. They sense the dead. The dog barks. And
And the guy up on the bridge literally walks off the bridge into the water. Liriel, what did you do? This page 618 in mine. This is, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages in. I made him walk. He would have killed you. She nods. She looks at the dog. Or she gives the dog a hug. Sam watches them. That howl was pure free magic. No charter magic in it at all. The dog seemed friendly, appeared to be devoted to Liriel. But he, Sam, could not forget how dangerous she was. There was something about the howl that reminded him of something. Some magic he had experienced he couldn't quite place. At least Mogget's case was straightforward. He was a free magic creature, bound and safe, while he wore the collar. Okay? He's bound by the collar, right? Collar can be removed. What about the dog? Is the dog bound by its collar? No. Yes, the collar does have binding and stuff in it, but the dog isn't being constrained by that collar, right? Because the dog comes and goes. When Liriel left the Claire, where was the dog? Soapstone figure in her pocket. And then when she's in the boat and she reaches, she wishes she had the dog, she reaches in the pocket and she feels dog skin. And it's the inside flap of the dog's ear. And she starts pulling and the whole dog comes out of this little waistcoat vest pocket. Okay? So the dog can appear and disappear at will. Mogget can't really, right? We're going to skip a bunch. We've only got like 3 minutes left. Go to, when they get to Abhorson's house. Okay? We're skipping the part with Clore. Clore nearly kills Sam. Dog barks and stops her. And they get to Abhorson's, and both the dog and Mogget say, we've got to go. Why do they have to go? They received word from Elamir. Mother and father are kind of detained. All hell's breaking loose. Sam, you chose a hell of a time to leave. Okay? Liriel finally pulls out the surcoat, the overcoat that the Sending gives her, because Sam has put on the overcoat the Sendings gave him, which has the Wallmaker's trowel, page 683. And Sam says, but they've been gone for centuries, 1,000 years at least. And she's standing there looking at him with this coat on, and he says, what? She signals to the Sending, it brings over the surcoat. She unfolds it. Are you all right, Sam? She goes, I don't know how to say this. She takes the waistcoat off. She puts on the other coat. I must be half Abhorson. I'm your aunt. Remember, he had, sexual feelings for her. My aunt, does my mother? I don't think so. And then she says, I must be the Abhorson in waiting. And Sam's like, thank you, there is a God, Mogget. Once I realized that Sam was not the Abhorson in waiting, I kept my eyes open for the real one to turn up. And I was here when Liriel's mother came to see Tersail, that is the former Abhorson. So I'm not? He says no. Liriel, but I am a daughter of the Claire. Being the Abhorson in waiting, and one day, hopefully on this end, the Abhorson was a much more difficult thing to accept. Why? Because it's a lot easier to look and peer and see the future than it is to, in the present, go into death. Even though she's gone into death, and it's not that bad.
She whispers, does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? I'm not going to get the sight, she asks the dog. Am I? Nope. But it is your clear heritage that gives you the gift of remembrance. For only a child of Abhorsen and Claire. So now notice the two beings that became part of the charter have now joined together. Little clue, we're going to see the seven joined together again. Well, take that back. No, I won't give anything else. So, she says, 689. Sorry, can't do that. I'll make some comments about the very end of this on Thursday, this chapter. Start Abhorsen. Abhorsen's quite a bit shorter than this. This is the longest book. This is almost 700. I think it's about 500. All right. I'll put up a quiz for Lyriel. That'll be due Sunday.